What do a chef, a tattoo, and the Wisconsin State Assembly have in common? Francesca Hong.
Hi, I'm Leah, totally excited today and ready to dig into our topic.
And I'm Garrett, feeling curious and can't wait to get started.
Welcome to Laid Back Learning with Leah and Garrett.
All right, let's set the stage. Today we're talking about Francesca Hong, who represents Wisconsin's 76th Assembly District, covering downtown and the east side of Madison, plus Maple Bluff. She's got a background that totally stands out in state politics.
This one's been on my mind. I recently read about how she started in kitchens as a dishwasher, worked her way up to line cook, then sous chef, and by 2011 became executive chef at a Madison bistro called 43 North. After 43 North closed in 2016, she co-owned a restaurant, Morris Ramen, and then stepped into public office. That leap from the back of house to the state assembly feels so grounded in real life. Her advocacy for worker rights, especially raising the tipped minimum wage, really resonated with me. The tipped minimum wage is a lower base pay restaurants can give tipped workers, with tips supposed to make up the difference. She argues a higher base would create stability. Honestly, that's close to the heart of it for so many service workers.
Let's dive right in. Big picture first. Francesca Hong is Wisconsin's first Asian American state legislator. She was sworn in January 2021. She's a former chef and small business owner, and she represents a very blue district in Madison. Policy-wise, she focuses on labor standards like wages and paid leave, environmental issues like clean water and climate targets, and more recently on ideas like a public bank proposal and putting guardrails on large AI data centers. A public bank, quickly, is a bank owned by the state that can offer low-cost loans to serve public goals, often partnering with community banks rather than replacing them. Data centers are big computing facilities that can draw a lot of electricity and water. Her point is to study the impact before racing ahead.
Here's something to get us started on her early life. She was born in Madison in November 1988 to Korean-American immigrant parents, and she grew up in Madison public schools. She graduated from Madison West High School in 2007 and played soccer there, which fits her team-oriented vibe. She went to the University of Wisconsin-Madison for Spanish and journalism, but in 2009 she left school to work full-time in restaurants. She rose from dishwasher to line cook to sous chef, and by 2011 was executive chef at 43 North. That was a fast climb in hospitality. After 43 North closed in 2016, she co-founded Morris Ramen with then-husband Matt Morris. It ran until 2024. Also in 2016, she co-founded the Culinary Ladies Collective with Madison restaurateurs Tammy Lax and Layla Borokim, focused on mentorship and safety for women in hospitality. That thread of building support systems keeps coming up for her.
Speaking of which, she's pretty rooted in local culture. She's a Milwaukee Bucks fan and a Forward Madison FC fan. Forward Madison FC is the pro soccer club in Madison. After the Bucks won the NBA title in 2021, she got a Bucks in 6 tattoo. That's pretty cool, right? And she stayed connected to service work. Even while serving in the assembly, she's worked part-time as a bartender. I mean, it's unusual to see a sitting lawmaker keeping a shift schedule. She said those shifts keep her close to what workers are actually dealing with in real time.
Okay, let's move on to her political rise. In March 2020, the then Representative Chris Taylor announced she wouldn't seek re-election, creating an open seat. Hong announced her run even though she didn't live in the district yet. Wisconsin law allows that as long as a candidate lives there by Election Day. She ran on a progressive message and, in a 7-way Democratic primary, finished first with just over 28% of the vote. Tyrone Craddock Williams, a Madison police officer, was second with about 22%. In the 2020 general election, she won in a landslide, around 88% to 12%, over Republican Patrick Hull. That district is pretty deeply blue. She ran unopposed in 2022 and 2024 as well, each time pulling more than 98% of the vote.
Why do you think that early campaign clicked for her? I mean, 7 people is a lot to beat with under a third of the vote.
I think it's the combination of lived experience and a clean message. She blended small business ownership with worker rights, for instance, calling for raising the tipped minimum wage and supporting unionization for culinary workers. That ties into her Economic Bill of Rights idea. Quick definition: her Economic Bill of Rights is a package framing basics like fair wages, housing, healthcare, and paid leave as rights. It's a state-level organizing framework. It hasn't passed, but she reintroduced versions across sessions to keep the focus. To me, that consistency matters. Also, she emphasized environmental protection. In 2021, she even did a dunk tank event to raise awareness about clean water.
Let's keep it moving to concrete legislative things. In 2024, Governor Tony Evers signed into law a requirement that public schools teach Asian American and Hmong American history. Hong helped introduce that effort earlier that year. It was a response to spikes in anti-Asian hate during COVID and meant to make curricula reflect Wisconsin's communities. In that same period, she supported creating a statewide paid family leave program. Paid family leave is time off with partial wage replacement so people can care for a new child or a seriously ill family member. She also got appointed to the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation Board, WEDC, the state's public-private economic development agency, holding a seat designated by Assembly Minority Leader Greta Neubauer. That appointment gave Hong a statewide economic lens beyond Madison.
And then there's her caucus and endorsement landscape. In 2024, she joined the State Assembly's Socialist Caucus, a group of legislators who coordinate on worker protections, climate policy, and civil liberties. She's also a member of the Democratic Socialists of America, or DSA, which backs democratic socialist policies like stronger worker rights and public services. The Madison area DSA endorsed her in May 2024. That identity shows up in other places too. In the 2026 governor's race, she pledged not to take corporate PAC money. For anyone new to that, corporate PACs are political action committees funded by corporations that donate to candidates. She's running a more grassroots model. And in 2024, she backed the uncommitted national movement in the presidential primaries to protest Gaza policy. Uncommitted was a protest vote to register dissent within the primary process.
Middle chapter. Here we go. In 2025, she helped form the first Asian caucus in the state assembly with Angelito Tenorio and Renuka Mayadev. The caucus is about coordination on policy and representation. That same year, she supported the Climate Accountability Act, which laid out greenhouse gas goals like cutting emissions by half by 2030 and reaching net zero by 2050. She also voted against the bipartisan 2025 to 2027 state budget, saying it underinvested in communities, a push for stronger social spending that can be a tough vote politically. In a 2025 interview, she shared that she had a mental health crisis at 18, was hospitalized for a week, and was later diagnosed with bipolar disorder. That disclosure adds context to her healthcare and stigma reduction perspective. It's vulnerable to share, and it shapes how people connect with her story.
All right, on to the next, her statewide run. She launched her campaign for governor in September 2025 with Rosie the Riveter imagery, the World War II-era icon of women's industrial labor that signals strength and solidarity. She talked a lot about public education funding and universal child care, and reiterated the No Corporate PAC pledge. She then rolled out a public bank proposal in Green Bay, pointing to the Bank of North Dakota as a model. The Bank of North Dakota is a century-old state-owned bank that partners with local banks to offer lower-cost credit across the state. Hong's version would target small farms, butcheries, and bakeries to strengthen local food systems and ease financing gaps that big lenders might not address. Later, in early 2026, she called for a moratorium on new AI data centers in Wisconsin, then co-drafted a bill to pause them while the state studies water, land use, and electricity impacts.
She also introduced a bill in February 2026 to repeal Wisconsin's anti-BDS law. BDS stands for Boycott, Divestment, Sanctions. It's a global movement related to Palestinian rights that encourages economic boycotts of Israel. Wisconsin has a law that restricts public contractors from engaging in such boycotts. Her argument for repeal is a free speech one. She says the state shouldn't condition contracts on political expression. By July 2026, the primary field shifted. Polling showed her leading, and Mandela Barnes, the former lieutenant governor, suspended his campaign in July 2026, saying she was likely to be the nominee. That was a big turning point. Other Democrats in the mix included Kelda Roys, David Crowley, and Joel Brennan, different profiles there. Roys is a longtime progressive figure, Crowley leads Milwaukee County, and Brennan is a former state administration official. Hong's no corporate PAC stance and policy mix really set her apart in that crowd.
Let's not skip a key moment here. In July 2026, she described a fatal Madison police shooting as an execution, and that word choice drew strong reactions. Within a week at a Democratic primary debate, she said she wouldn't sign a bill that reduced police funding and signaled she'd avoid that kind of language as governor, framing it as recognizing the responsibility of holding the biggest microphone in the state. The why here is complex. Using the term execution felt, to many, like prejudging events before investigations concluded, while supporters argued it expressed moral urgency. The adjustment in tone suggests she was recalibrating for a statewide role, balancing accountability with the need to maintain public trust during active investigations. To me, that's where leadership style and word choice really intersect.
I hear that. Part of me thinks rhetoric can either open doors or close them. Free speech matters, and at the same time, as a prospective governor, words can shape how people feel about due process. It's a fine line, and there's no perfect answer, but the quick pivot tells me she recognized that the statewide audience is broader than a district rally. That doesn't erase her core policies on public safety reform. It's more about tone calibration. This one's got some depth to it.
Real talk. And it connects to another civil liberties thread. Her proposal to repeal anti-BDS restrictions was framed around the free speech of contractors. That may be controversial, but the logic is consistent with what she said about not conditioning public work on political beliefs. Even if folks disagree on the substance, you can see the through line on civil liberties.
Speaking of culture moments, the Bucks in 6 tattoo is a fun connector. It marks that 2021 championship high and humanizes her profile. Sports are one of those shared languages. She's also a supporter of Forward Madison FC and the Rosie the Riveter theme at her launch. Those visuals matter because they tap into recognizable symbols and tell people something fast without a long policy paper. I could get behind that idea of culture as shorthand.
Okay, counterfactual moment. What if Chris Taylor had sought re-election in 2020? If that seat never opened, Hong might have stayed focused on Morris Ramen longer, especially navigating the pandemic's ups and downs in hospitality. Maybe the Culinary Ladies Collective would have expanded its mentorship programs further. She could still have been active on worker rights from the industry side, pushing for better wage floors and leave policies as a business owner advocate. Politically, without that 2020 opening, the milestone of the first Asian American legislator in Wisconsin might have been delayed too. Her later platform points, like a public bank or a data center moratorium, might have entered the conversation later or through another candidate. That's a thread worth pulling on.
Yeah, that checks out. Open seats are rare chances. Without it, the Democratic field in 2026 might have looked different too. Momentum begets momentum. By serving in the Assembly, she built a record. The 2024 Asian American and Hmong American History Law repeated pushes for an economic Bill of Rights and a seat on WEDC. Without legislative experience, a statewide run in 2026 would have been a lot tougher to pitch. So the what if says a lot about timing and institutional pathways. Wild how that works out.
Before we wrap, I want to circle back to one more thread. Her small business arc. Morris Ramen closed in 2024 after 8 years. She's talked about thin margins, access to capital, and how public policy can stabilize independent food businesses. That seems directly linked to her public bank idea. And she's continued to show up at a bar shift here and there, keeping that worker lens. It's not symbolic only. It sounds like that's where a lot of her policy instincts were formed, from the dish pit onward.
And on climate, The clean water dunk tank in 2021 was playful but purposeful. Then by 2025, she was supporting a climate bill with measurable targets. That's a move from awareness to structure. It pairs with her data center pause idea, which is basically a precautionary principle. Press pause, assess grid and water impacts, then set standards. Not gonna lie, as someone who likes to, puzzle that one out, I appreciate a study-first approach when the stakes are long-term.
Stay curious out there, and thanks for hanging with us on Laid Back Learning with Leah and Garrett.
So there we have it, folks. Until next time.